Hello, I'm Brian Fox. This is my channel, I Hate Rock Music, and today I want to talk about a band called FRITH'S Massacre. And for me, it was a dream come true. I was always a big fan of Henry Cow, the art rock British band. Big fan of Fred Frith and his solo work. And when he decided to do a power trio, I was all in. So as soon as it came out, I immediately bought it and was just thrilled. And the BBC described it as an unholy union of the Shadows, Beefheart, Derek Bailey, and Funkadelic. And I don't think that gives a very good idea, but it shows that there are a lot of ideas floating around in this band. So Fred Frith, when Henry Cow finally disbanded, he moved to New York City around 79, 80, and started mixing with all the uptown music scene in New York. And he came across a band called Material, and I really love Material's early work, particularly their first couple records. And they had a rhythm section with Fred Maher on drums and Bill Laswell on bass. And so, just on a lark to play a show, Fred Frith had met them, hooked up with them, and did a live show, and it got a great reception. And fortunately, there's a couple of really great bootleg shows from that period. And so they played around for a year or so before they released their first album. And as I say, we're blessed to have some of these early live recordings. So in 1981, they released their first album, Killing Time, on Celluloid Records, and it's amazing. It's really great to hear Fred Frith playing in a straight, well, not straightforward, but a rock format with his incredibly imaginative guitar playing. And it's very syncopated, very angular. As he said, it reflected the New York City because it was loud and aggressive. And as I say, I just dreamed of Fred Frith doing something like that, being such an imaginative guitarist. And the tunes on that first album are pretty short. They've got really great arrangements. It's definitely what I would call punk jazz in a way. There's some jazz influence in there, but very syncopated, very angular, very aggressive. And Fred Maher and Bill Laswell are a stunning rhythm section. And it definitely, they brought their sensibilities from Material behind Fred Frith, and it really worked on paper really well. And so, if that wasn't enough, if I just had that one album, it would have been great. But they reformed in 1998, and so eight years later, anyway, about 9, 10 years later, and this time around, Bill Laswell was still on bass, but they got the amazing Charles Hayward from This Heat on drums and adopted a whole new sound. And I have to say, like so many other bands, they're one of my favorite bands of all time. To hear Fred Frith in this kind of improvisational power trio setting is just a dream come true. And unlike their first album, the stuff that Massacre did as a trio with Charles Hayward on drums is sprawling and more improvised, and really gives Fred Frith a chance to show everything he's made of as a guitar player. His imagination just gets to run wild with this great backing by Charles Hayward and Bill Laswell. And you really couldn't, for this kind of band, you really couldn't get a better rhythm section than Bill Laswell and Charles Hayward. Anybody that's familiar with This Heat will know that. And of course, Bill Laswell has made quite a name for himself over the years working with John Zorn and in his various projects. And so Massacre ended up being around for quite a while. They recorded a studio album called My Funny Valentine, 1998, and then they followed it up with 3 live albums, Meltdown in 2001, Lonely Heart in 2007, and Love Me Tender in 2013. And just incredible. It's so wonderful to have 4 albums by this band, every possible configuration and imagination of what a guitar, bass, and drums can do are explored on these records. And they're really, just because of the Fred Frith's involvement, of course, they're really unlike any other band out there. And if you like jazz, if you like Henry Cow, if you like Fred Frith's work, if you like Material, any of those sort of things, or you just drool over imaginative power trios like I do. You got to have Massacre's records, and including the first one, even though it's radically different. It's great to hear all these different variations of what this kind of combination could do. And then briefly, between 1983 and 1985, Fred Frith and Bill Laswell also hooked up with Anton Fier on drums from Golden Palominos, and they did some shows, notably a bootleg from Japan. I'll post that below as well. And it's definitely not like Massacre at all. It's definitely an improvisational trio, and there's a lot of the same elements of Massacre, but it's definitely a lot more low key, a lot less loud, a lot less aggressive, but an interesting addition to the catalog. And so Massacre, really sad, of course, that I never got to see them live. I don't believe they ever came to Seattle, but I put that up there with other great um, power trios of that era, like the Casper Brotsman Massacre was another one, although they were considerably heavier. But like I say, what a dream come true to hear Fred Frith in that sort of setting. And I'm glad it's something that happened. It could have easily have never happened. And but to hear Fred Frith in a power trio is just as good as it gets. So anyway, that's my recommendation. Massacre, Fred Frith. Uh, 5 albums total. I've got a bunch of clips below if you've never heard them before. Check them out. I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching I Hate Rock Music.